Hey everybody, it's Nate with Z-Bros, and today we want to talk about limit straps for your UTV. And in this video, we're going to cover some of the basics of how to install limit straps, and then the Z-Bros product and some of those key features that you want to pay attention to. And on those applications like the XP1000,
we supply a divider that's cut down.
billet nut. Another Honda Talon. This happens to be a 1000R. Our limit straps are awesome. They're triple layer sewn, so we have 3 layers of webbing, and that's for strength, obviously. And then really nice ends with metal backers on these rings so that the strap itself doesn't cut or wear out with the ends on here. But we're going to go over kind of the basics on a Razor, and this video is applicable to your Razor Pro XP, which we have here, both 2 and 4 seat models, Razor Turbo S, Razor XP1000 and XP1000 turbos, and then also like the RS1s. They all have similar systems, and the kit is basically the same. So we're going to go over the strap details and also kind of the hardware details and what you need to know in order to install the straps like we have already done here on this car. So let's dive into some of the nuances. All right, so we've got the one side is kind of already installed. So we've just got half of the limit strap kit here. And in the limit strap kits, you're gonna get front straps and rear straps. And this one's pretty obvious which is the front and which is the rear. Generally speaking though, the fronts are always shorter than the rears. And on these applications that we're talking about, it is going to be that way. So XP1000, Pro XP, Turbo S, and RS1s. The short strap is the front, the longer strap is the rear, and you're going to have 4 straps obviously, and then you're going to also have 4 of these, and these little spring retainer cuffs, as we call them. This helps hold the strap from flopping around after it's installed. So you're going to have 4 of those, and then you're going to have your hardware kit, and the hardware kit's going to come with spacers and washers and new nuts and new bolts. And this allows us to mount the strap in line with the shock. And also something to pay attention to on these cars is on the majority of them, you're going to have a 10mm bolt up front and then a 12mm bolt in the rear. But on the Turbo S, for example, both front and rear is going to be 12mm, but you just obviously pay attention to what size of factory bolt comes out and match that up with the supplied hardware. So the spacers are all the same length, so there's nothing to worry about there, but bolt size is slightly different. So that's pretty straightforward. There's not a whole lot of hand tools or expertise needed to install these. But one thing that we'll point out with this one already being installed is that hardware is replacing your factory hardware. And as you can see both on the top, and it's hard to see on the top because of the reservoir, and the bottom, you can see the placement of the spacer. And this is to space the strap itself out away from the spring and the spring hardware. So pay attention where that spacer goes. Obviously you don't want to put it on front because you don't have room on the front of the car. You want it to run behind the shock, and then replace that factory hardware with the supplied hardware as shown on the front. And then your little strap retainer, this is so that when you're going through a bump cycle, it doesn't sit and flop around as much. So you just basically stick that around the spring and then Velcro it to itself. And that'll help keep the strap from flopping around or catching on anything. It just kind of helps keep that out of the way. Now, something else to notice that you might get a little confused at first, but as you can see, this strap is installed and this strap is not. We've accounted for the stretch factor. So the strap is meant to stretch, so we've built the strap shorter specific to your machine. So every machine is different, so that when it's installed and when the weight of the tire and wheel and everything is hanging, the strap will stretch to that full extended length of the shock. Because the purpose of these straps is to protect your shock and also to protect your CV from basically topping out. So if you have that topping out noise of your shock kind of clanking or coming to full extension that's annoying you, the limit strap is going to be your solution to that. So we want them to begin shorter so that when the weight of the tire and wheel and everything, it stretches the strap and allows it to go to that full extended length, but also it cushions that full extension. So when the strap is new, it might not allow the shock to go all the way to full extension like this one. It's holding it a little bit away from full extension, but we're not really limiting the travel. So when you're under load, you have the tire and wheel and you're mobbing through the whoops, it is going to be able to come out to full extension, but the strap is going to stretch and cushion it to that point. So we've engineered into the length of the strap specific to the front or rear of the car based on the full extended length, the strap length. So don't be afraid when you go to put them on that it's shorter, because that's designed into the system. And that's one thing that we want to go over. When you do this install, you want to do the top first. So install your top shock bolt first, and then you'll actually have to pull out the bottom factory bolt, put in the new supplied bolt, and then actually put the weight of the car on the vehicle and put it on the ground. And then as the A-arm cycles up, you'll be able to slip the strap over the bottom and then actually tighten up your hardware. So it will actually have to be on the ground to install it because of that shorter strap length. All right, so we've switched to the other side of the car and we've got our bolt hardware loose. And this is where, you know, having a jack, we're on a lift, so it's gonna look a little bit easier, but with a jack, you'll have to have the weight of the car, you know, all the way off so you can get this top shock bolt out. And I'm just gonna kind of lift up on the tire and wheel and push the factory bolt out, because we're gonna replace this. So we'll get that factory bolt out. We're gonna set that to the side, and this is a 10mm bolt, so we're gonna replace it with the 10mm bolt here and washer. So now at this point, because if you look in here, the radiator gets in the way, the bolt has to go from back to front, but we have to assemble everything off the car. So depending on how you want your logo to read, you know, either direction, you're gonna put your bolt on with the washer and then the spacer. And then we're gonna actually have to have somebody hold the car up or hold the shock up so we can line that up and push it through. And then it'll fit behind the reservoir right here. It's pretty kind of hard to see in this video, but just like that is the way that you'll assemble it back to front. All right, so one thing to note on this Pro XP on the driver's side is there's a harness that kind of tucks right in behind the reservoir. It's a good idea to undo that from its clip position and slide it back inboard to get out of the way of the strap, and then re-zip tie that to the center of the bulkhead area here, or the frame where it comes up. But that harness likes to get in the way of the spacer and the strap itself. It's hard to see again because the reservoir's here. And then you can go ahead and tighten up your upper bolt and torque that. These 10mm bolts, somewhere around 60 foot-pounds on these 10mm hardware. 12mm hardware is a little bit higher torque spec, but we're gonna go ahead and tighten that up right now. And this driver's side is just probably the most difficult to install because of the brake reservoir and just everything that seems to be in the way. If it's a Smart Shock equipped car, you're gonna have to deal with those wires as well. You just wanna make sure that nothing is getting pinched or smashed between any of the hardware when you do the install. Obviously that's gonna cause you more problems. So if you're not comfortable with it, take it to a shop, a Zebros dealer, and then they can have their techs do the install. All right, so now we're gonna hook up the lower. If you come in here, you can see the strap is shorter by a couple of inches to account for the stretch and the length of this strap. So we're gonna need to drop it down, pull the factory bolt out, and then feed the supplied new bolt in and spacer while using the weight of the vehicle to make this easier. A lift obviously makes it pretty easy. It feels like it's easy. So the new bolt, and that can be pushed all the way through. And then we're going to drop our spacer, and then this is where you want the weight of the vehicle, because you can see it's quite a bit away, but as soon as you put weight on the vehicle, you'll be able to put your strap on, put your washer on. But that's why you have to do this in a specific order, or you're just going to fight it. And then again, torque the bottom to about 65 foot-pounds, just like the upper. Okay, so now that it's installed, we can lift it up and we can install our strap retainer. And generally you want this somewhere in the middle of the spring. You probably don't want it up here next to the divider. And the reason for that is this spring is going to compress, and then you'll have this webbing that'll get stuck in between here. So I usually come up, 4 or 5 coils from the bottom, and then hook up your little retainer. And this is just going to help so that when you're at full bump, this strap isn't flapping around. It can't get hooked on anything. It just helps to keep the strap near the shock and in line. And that's it for the front. So we'll jump to the back and give you some of the tips and tricks for the rear installation on these cars. All right, so we're moving to the rear of the car here. And as you can see, it's going to be pretty much the exact same process as the front. You're going to have hardware and spacers. This happens to be 12 millimeter. But the one thing to note and talk about on the Pro XP is this coolant reservoir. So we want to mount the strap on the outside of the shock in this application, because we're not able to have room to mount the strap on the inside. But on the other applications, I believe the Turbo S, Pro XP, if there is room, it can be mounted on the inboard side. That's preferred in the rear, but it's not necessary. It'll work on either side. But on this one, we are going to mount it on the outside of the shock. So we're going to jump into installing the other side and show you that process. But as you can see here, this one's fully installed. Spacers on the outside, and on the top bolt, the bolt is going from the outside in. Again, because of this space, there's not a lot of space to get in there and to get your nut on, so there's no way to run the bolt from the inside out. And I believe that is the way that the factory bolt comes out. But then on the bottom, we actually run from the inside out, so then we can have the bolt in and weight the car and then slip the strap over the end of the bolt before we torque it down. All right, so we're moved to the other side of the car. We're going to start by loosening that top bolt and removing it and replacing it with the new hardware supply. Okay, and you're going to locate your new 12 millimeter bolt, nut, and spacer. We're going to feed this through from the inside out on this one, because we're going to put the strap on the outside. Got it. Now you can put your spacer on, and then grab your rear strap, drop that on, and then your washer and your nut, and then you can torque these rear bolts down to 80 foot-pounds. This is a 12 millimeter bolt, so tighten those down good. Lower shock bolt. And pull that out, and then one thing to note on this lower, because the strap's on the outside, we've got to install the new hardware from the inside out, like so. And you need your spacer on there, and then we're going to go ahead and lower the lift so that we can hook the strap on and then torque the lower bolt. Okay, with the weight of the vehicle, you're able to get that loop on, and then your washer and nut, and then you can torque this to the 80 foot-pounds and hook up your little strap retainer like so. That'll help keep it out of the tire and from rubbing on the tire when you go to full bump. All right, so we've gone over the basics of the installation. As always, check out zebrosracing.com, and if you have any questions, please reach out to us directly. And you can get all of your Zebros products online or at your local Zebros Racing dealer. Thanks for watching.